Imagine walking home late at night, tired from a long day of work, when suddenly you see someone standing on the edge of a bridge, ready to end it all. Do you walk away, or do you risk everything to save a stranger? This is a story of Marcus, a struggling single dad, who shouted just 2 words, "Don't jump." And what happened next would change his life forever. Don't jump. The words tore out of Marcus's throat before he even realized he was speaking. His voice cracked, echoing into the cold night air like a desperate plea. He wasn't shouting at his daughter or a friend or even someone he knew. No, this was a stranger, a young woman he had never seen before, standing on the very edge of the city's old steel bridge, her arms stretched out as though the wind itself might carry her away. Marcus froze in his tracks, his worn work boots scraping against the rough concrete. His chest tightened, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. The bridge beneath him trembled every time a car sped past, but all his attention was fixed on her. One wrong move, one slip of her foot, and she would vanish into the rushing black waters below. He had seen pain before. He had felt it. But this was different. This was raw, immediate, life and death hanging in the balance. The woman couldn't have been more than her mid-20s. Her hair, long and tangled from the whipping wind, shimmered faintly in the glow of the street lamps. She wore a silvery evening dress, the kind of outfit that belonged at a party, not at midnight on a freezing bridge. Her high heels were discarded nearby, lying on their sides like broken soldiers. Her bare feet gripped the cold steel rail. Her shoulders shook as she cried, but her body leaned forward toward the darkness. Marcus's heart pounded. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man, tired, overworked, carrying the heavy burden of being a single father. He didn't have money. He didn't have power. But at that moment, none of that mattered. All he had was his voice, his trembling hands, and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he could stop what was about to happen. "Don't do it," he said again, softer this time, like a prayer. "Please, don't jump." The woman turned her head slightly, enough for Marcus to see her tear-streaked face. The expression in her eyes made his stomach twist. It was emptiness, like all the light inside her had already burned out. "You wouldn't understand," she said, her voice hoarse. It was barely more than a whisper, but the words cut through him. Marcus swallowed hard, his throat dry. The truth was, maybe he did understand. He remembered nights when he wanted to give up too. Nights when the weight of bills, the loneliness of his empty apartment, and the ache of missing his late wife had almost crushed him. But he had a daughter. He couldn't let go. He couldn't disappear. Alana needed him. She was the only reason he hadn't stood in the very place this woman was standing now. He took a cautious step closer, his hands raised as if approaching a wild animal. "Listen, I don't know what you're going through, but I know that the river isn't the answer. Whatever pain you're carrying, there's another way. There has to be." The woman's grip on the railing tightened, her knuckles turning white. The water below roared, reflecting the glow of the city lights in a way that almost seemed to beckon her. Marcus's legs trembled. His whole body screamed for him to move faster, to grab her, to do something. But he knew if he rushed, he might scare her. And if she slipped now, it would all be over. The world seemed to narrow around them. The hum of cars in the distance, the faint sound of music drifting from a nearby bar, even the chill of the wind, all of it disappeared. There was only Marcus, the woman, and the impossible choice hanging in the air. "Look," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I don't know your name. I don't know what brought you here tonight. But I swear to you, if you take that step, someone out there will lose a piece of their soul. Someone will cry for you. Someone will wonder every single day if they could have done something to stop it." Her lips trembled, but she didn't move back. A tear slid down her cheek, catching the streetlight before it fell into the darkness. Marcus clenched his fists. He thought of Alana asleep at home, curled up under the thin blanket on the old couch they shared. What if this woman had someone waiting for her too? A sibling, a mother, a friend? He couldn't let that bond be broken. Not if there was a chance to save it. He stepped closer. His boots scuffed against the concrete again, and her body jolted. "Stay back," she cried. He froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. But he didn't retreat. Instead, He lowered his voice gentler than before. I won't touch you, I promise. I can't walk away. I've lost too much already in my life, and I can't stand here and let the world lose you too. The woman squeezed her eyes shut. Her shoulders heaved with silent sobs. Marcus knew this was a critical moment, the space between life and death where a single word, a single breath, could make all the difference. So he whispered the only words that came to him, words he once wished someone had said to him during his darkest nights. You are not alone. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The city lights flickered on the water. The wind carried the scent of rain, and Marcus stood there, just a tired, struggling father, begging a stranger to choose life. And in that fragile silence, as her body swayed slightly, Marcus prepared himself for anything. For her to step back, or for her to let go. The city lights glimmered in the distance as Marcus, Isabella, and little Alana walked home one evening. They had stopped by the bookstore where Isabella now worked, and she proudly showed Alana the shelf she had organized all by herself. Alana skipped ahead, humming happily, her little backpack bouncing on her shoulders. Marcus and Isabella followed behind, walking side by side. For a moment, Isabella slowed her steps as they passed a bridge. She gazed at it quietly, her heart thudding in her chest. Marcus noticed. You okay? He asked, his voice low and careful. Isabella exhaled slowly. That's the spot, she whispered. The night you saved me. I thought my story was ending here. She paused and smiled faintly. But now, I realized it was the night my new story began. Marcus looked at her with warmth in his eyes. Life is funny like that. Sometimes, the worst moments lead us to the best chapters. Alana suddenly ran back, grabbing Isabella's hand. Come on, Mommy Isabella, she giggled, tugging at her. Isabella froze, her eyes wide. What did you just call me? She asked softly. Alana tilted her head, completely innocent. Mommy Isabella, because you're like my mommy now. You make me feel safe. Tears filled Isabella's eyes. She knelt down, hugging Alana tightly. Thank you, sweetheart. You don't know how much that means to me. Marcus's throat tightened as he watched the two most important people in his life embrace. That moment, under the glowing city lights, sealed everything. They weren't just three separate souls anymore. They were family. Weeks turned into months, and Isabella continued to heal. With Marcus's support and Alana's boundless love, she rebuilt her confidence piece by piece. Her job at the bookstore became more stable, and she started attending evening classes to learn new skills. One night, as the three of them sat together watching a movie, Isabella looked around the cozy living room and thought to herself, I was once standing on a bridge, ready to give up, and now I'm here, laughing, loved, alive. She leaned against Marcus, who wrapped an arm around her shoulder without saying a word. They didn't need words anymore. Their bond spoke louder than anything else, and that's the power of a single act of kindness. Marcus, a struggling single dad, saved a stranger's life, and in return found a friend, a partner, and a brighter future for his daughter. Isabella, who once thought her story was over, discovered that every ending can become a new beginning. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with someone who might need hope today, and of course, subscribe for more inspiring stories just like this one. Remember, your one act of kindness could change someone's life forever. See you in the next story. The morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Marcus's apartment, spilling warm golden rays across the small living room. Isabella blinked awake, disoriented for a moment, before the memories of the night before came rushing back. Her desperate walk to the bridge, Marcus's strong hands pulling her back, Alana's innocent smile, and the warmth of a bedtime story. She sat up slowly, realizing she had fallen asleep on the couch. A blanket was draped neatly over her shoulders. She touched it gently, recognizing the quiet care behind such a simple gesture. For the first time in months, she hadn't spent the night drowning in her own thoughts. Instead, she had slept peacefully. The smell of frying eggs and butter reached her nose. From the kitchen, she heard Marcus's voice humming softly to a tune on the radio. She stood up, a little hesitant, and peeked inside. Marcus stood at the stove, spatula in hand, wearing an old t-shirt with faded letters. Alana was at the table, swinging her legs happily while coloring in a book. "Morning," Marcus said, glancing at Isabella with a smile that somehow carried both kindness and reassurance. "Hope you like scrambled eggs. I'm no chef, but Alana insists mine are the best in the world." "They are," Alana chirped, raising her crayon. "Daddy makes eggs that taste like sunshine." Isabella chuckled softly, the sound surprising her. "Then I'd be honored to try them." They ate breakfast together, the three of them squeezed around the small table. It wasn't fancy, eggs, toast, and a little orange juice, but it felt more filling than any meal Isabella had eaten in a long time. The laughter, the warmth, the simplicity, it was exactly what her soul had been starving for. When they finished, Isabella quietly helped clear the dishes. Marcus tried to stop her, but she shook her head. "Let me," she said firmly. "I want to help." Marcus didn't argue. Instead, he watched her for a moment, sensing that the simple act of washing dishes gave her a small but powerful feeling of purpose. Later that morning, Isabella and Marcus sat on the couch, while Alana played with her stuffed animals on the floor. The TV was on in the background, but neither of them paid much attention to it. "You don't have to say anything if you're not ready," Marcus said gently. "But if you want to talk, I'll listen." Isabella hesitated. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap. But something about Marcus's steady presence gave her courage. "I lost my job a few months ago," she began softly. "I'd worked at the same company for years. Then suddenly, I wasn't needed anymore. My savings ran out. My apartment was gone. Friends I thought I could rely on stopped answering my calls. Every door I knocked on slammed shut. And eventually, I just couldn't see a way forward." Her voice cracked, and tears welled in her eyes. Marcus didn't interrupt. He just nodded, encouraging her to continue. "I kept telling myself to be strong," she whispered. "But every day, I felt weaker. Yesterday, I thought I'd reached the end. I didn't want to burden anyone with my pain anymore. That's why I was on that bridge." Silence lingered for a moment. Then Marcus spoke, his tone steady and full of quiet conviction. "You were never a burden, Isabella. Life, it pushes us down. Hard. But I've learned that sometimes the darkest nights show us the brightest stars. You're still here because your story isn't finished. And trust me, sometimes what feels like the end is really just the beginning." His words struck her like a gentle wave, washing over the jagged edges of her heart. "Do you really believe that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Marcus nodded. "Absolutely. Look, I'm no stranger to hard times. Raising Alana alone hasn't been easy. I've had nights where I thought I couldn't go on. But every time I see her smile, I know why I keep fighting. And now, maybe you'll find your reason too." That afternoon, Marcus helped Isabella look at local resources, shelters, job listings, and support groups. At first, Isabella resisted. The fear of rejection still clung to her. But Marcus reminded her gently, "Small steps, that's all it takes." Together, they filled out a few online job applications. Isabella's hand shook as she typed, but Marcus cheered her on with every click. Alana, meanwhile, kept bringing her drawings at Isabella. "Look, this is you," she announced proudly, holding up a picture of three stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "That's me, that's Daddy, and that's you. We're friends now." Isabella's heart swelled. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had drawn her as part of family. By evening, Isabella felt something unfamiliar stirring inside her. Hope. It was fragile like a small flame in the wind, but it was there. Over the next week, Isabella began visiting Marcus and Alana regularly. She helped Alana with her homework, cooked meals with Marcus, and even read bedtime stories again. Each visit chipped away at the loneliness that had consumed her. One evening, Marcus found her staring at the bridge from across the street. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, I was just thinking how close I came to giving up. And now, here I am, smiling, laughing, living." Marcus looked at her thoughtfully. "That's the thing about bridges. They can be endings or beginnings. That night, you chose a new beginning. Isabella swallowed hard, her eyes brimming with tears. No, Marcus, you gave me that chance. You and Alana. He shook his head. We gave you a hand. But you're the one who's walking forward. Days turned into weeks. Isabella eventually landed a part-time job at a local bookstore, a quiet place where she felt at peace. The owner, an elderly woman with kind eyes, welcomed her warmly. Every day after work, Isabella would stop by Marcus's apartment. She and Alana became inseparable, and Marcus, well, he became more than just a rescuer. He became a friend, a mentor, and maybe, just maybe, something deeper. But most importantly, Isabella began to believe in herself again. One evening, as she tucked Alana into bed, the little girl whispered, "I'm glad Daddy found you that night. Now you're part of our family." Tears rolled down Isabella's cheeks as she kissed the child's forehead. "I'm glad too, sweetheart. More than you know." And so, the woman who had nearly ended her life on a bridge found herself starting a new one, step by step, with the love of a child and the kindness of a single father guiding her. She wasn't fully healed yet. The scars were still there, but she was alive. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The night had grown colder, the air crisp with chill that made Isabella shiver. She pulled her arms tightly across her chest, realizing just how drained she was. Not just emotionally, but physically. Her body felt heavy, her legs unsteady, as if the weight of despair was still clinging to her bones. Marcus noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked gently. She gave a half-hearted nod. "I think I just need to rest." Marcus looked at her for a moment, then made a decision. "Come on, you can't stay out here all night. My place isn't much, but it's safe and it's warm. You'll be okay there." Isabella hesitated. The thought of going to a stranger's home should have alarmed her, but something about Marcus, his sincerity, his gentleness, the way it fought to keep her alive, made her trust him. She nodded quietly. They walked side by side along the dimly lit streets. Marcus kept a careful pace, making sure she didn't stumble. When they reached his apartment building, a modest brick structure with chipped paint and creaky stairs, Isabella was surprised by how ordinary it looked. It wasn't glamorous or polished, but it radiated a certain comfort, like a place that had seen real life, not just surface appearances. As Marcus unlocked the door, Isabella braced herself for chaos. After all, he was a single dad raising a child alone. She expected toys scattered everywhere, piles of laundry, maybe even dishes stacked high in the sink. But when he pushed the door open, she found herself pleasantly surprised. The apartment was small but tidy. The living room had a second-hand couch with a couple of mismatched pillows, and a faint scent of lavender lingered in the air. On the wall hung a few crayon drawings, stick figures, rainbows, hearts, all proudly displayed like priceless art. "This is home," Marcus said simply, motioning for her to step inside. Isabella's eyes lingered on the drawings. "Did your daughter make these?" Marcus's face softened with pride. "Yeah, Alana loves to draw. Every time she finishes one, she insists I put it on the wall. Says it makes the house brighter." Isabella smiled faintly, her first genuine smile in months. "She's right. It does." Before Marcus could respond, the sound of tiny footsteps echoed down the hallway. A moment later, a little girl appeared, barefoot, wearing pink pajamas decorated with stars. Her curly hair was tied up in a loose ponytail, and her big brown eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Daddy?" she asked, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Who's that?" Marcus crouched down so he was eye level with her. "Hey, sweetheart. This is Isabella. She's a friend. She's going to stay here tonight." Alana blinked, studying Isabella with a seriousness far beyond her years. Then, unexpectedly, she walked right up to her and extended a tiny hand. "Hi, Isabella," she said politely. "I'm Alana. Do you like unicorns?" The question caught Isabella off guard, but it also warmed her heart. She crouched down slowly, taking the little girl's hand. "Hi, Alana. Yes, I do like unicorns." Alana grinned wide, as if that was the best answer anyone could have given. "Good. I have unicorn stickers. You can see them tomorrow." Isabella chuckled softly, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in what felt like forever. Something about the innocence in Alana's voice, the pure acceptance in her eyes, made Isabella feel safe in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Marcus smiled, watching the interaction. "Okay, kiddo, back to bed. It's late. Can Isabella read me a story?" Alana asked suddenly, glancing at her father with hopeful eyes. Marcus hesitated, looking at Isabella, only if she wants to. Isabella froze for a moment, unsure. She hadn't read a bedtime story since she was a child herself, but the longing in Alana's eyes tugged at something deep inside her. She nodded slowly. "I'd love to." Alana's face lit up, and she grabbed Isabella's hand eagerly, pulling her toward her bedroom. Marcus gave Isabella a reassuring look as if to say, "Thank you," before letting them go. The bedroom was small but colorful, filled with stuffed animals, fairy lights strung along the wall, and a shelf overflowing with children's books. Alana climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin, and handed Isabella a book about a brave little rabbit who went on adventures. Isabella began to read, her voice shaky at first, but growing steadier with each page. To her surprise, she found herself enjoying it. She even used silly voices for the characters, which made Alana giggle uncontrollably. For those precious moments, Isabella wasn't a broken woman standing on a bridge. She was simply someone who mattered to a child. When the story ended, Alana yawned and whispered, "You read just like a mommy." The words pierced Isabella's heart. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears, and brushed a strand of hair from the little girl's face. "Good night, Alana." "Good night, Isabella," the girl murmured before drifting off to sleep. Isabella sat quietly for a moment, watching her chest rise and fall. A warmth spread through her, unfamiliar but comforting. She realized she hadn't thought about ending her life since stepping into this apartment. Something about being here, about being wanted, even if just for a story, made her feel alive again. When she stepped back into the living room, Marcus was waiting on the couch. He had 2 steaming mugs of tea in his hands. He handed one to her. "She liked you," he said softly. "She doesn't warm up to people that fast." Isabella took the mug, her hands trembling slightly from the warmth. "She's incredible. You're raising her so well, Marcus." He chuckled. "I'm trying. Most days I feel like I'm winging it, but seeing her smile makes me think I'm doing okay." They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. The apartment was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in what felt like forever, Isabella didn't feel like she was drowning. "Marcus," she said finally, her voice low, "thank you for tonight, for saving me, for letting me in." He shook his head. "No, Isabella, thank you. You reminded me why I keep fighting. Sometimes we forget we're not alone in this world. Tonight, I think we both needed that reminder." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from gratitude. As she sat there, sipping tea in a stranger's living room, with the faint sound of a child's breathing down the hall, Isabella realized something she hadn't believed in a long time. Maybe life still had something left for her. The night was still. The hum of distant cars on the freeway blended with the gentle rush of the river below. For a while, Isabella and Marcus simply sat in silence, breathing, letting the storm of emotion settle. The weight of her confession still lingered in the air, but there was also a new thread of connection, thin, fragile, but real. Isabella finally wiped her eyes, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders. She turned slightly, studying Marcus with curiosity. "You said you're a single dad?" she asked quietly, as though the thought surprised her. Marcus nodded slowly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, single dad to the most incredible little girl in the world." There was warmth in his tone, the kind of warmth that only comes from love deeper than words. Isabella caught it immediately. Her brows lifted. "Tell me about her." Marcus's eyes lit up, a stark contrast to the exhaustion written across his face. "Her name's Alana. She just turned 8 last month. Brightest kid you'll ever meet. She's got this smile that can light up a whole room. And she's tough, tougher than me sometimes." Isabella tilted her head, watching him carefully. "Where's her mother?" The question made Marcus's smile falter slightly. He drew in a breath, staring out at the rippling water before answering. She left when Alana was a baby. Said motherhood wasn't for her. Said she wanted freedom. I begged her to stay, but you can't make someone love what they don't want. The pain in his voice was quiet, but it was there, raw, unhealed. Isabella felt her throat tighten as she listened. "So it's just been you and your daughter since then?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. "Just us, and it hasn't been easy. Some nights, I went to bed hungry so she could eat. I've worked shifts at warehouses, cleaned offices, drove trucks, whatever it took to pay the bills. Some months, I still came up short. But no matter how tired I am, when I see Alana sleeping, I know it's worth it. Every sacrifice, every drop of sweat, she's my reason for everything." Isabella's eyes glistened again. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself, as though holding on to the weight of his words. "You must be exhausted," she whispered. Marcus chuckled dryly, shaking his head. "Exhausted doesn't even cover it. But you know what? I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. Because being her dad, that's the best thing that ever happened to me. Even on the hardest days, she gives me hope. She reminds me that I'm not as powerless as I feel." His words settled deep into Isabella's chest. She couldn't remember the last time someone spoke with such conviction about love, responsibility, and sacrifice. "Does she know?" Isabella asked. "About all you've given up for her?" Marcus smiled softly. "Kids don't really understand things like that yet. She doesn't know the nights I spent sitting at the table, staring at overdue bills. She doesn't know the times I had to pretend I wasn't hungry so she could eat. And honestly, I don't want her to. She deserves to just be a kid, happy, carefree, dreaming big. That's my job, to make sure she has that chance." Isabella swallowed hard. "And what about you? Don't you ever feel alone?" The question lingered in the air. Marcus let out a long sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. "All the time. When I tuck her in at night, when the apartment is quiet. Yeah, I feel it. Some nights, I wonder if I'm enough, if I'm failing her, if she deserves better. But then she looks at me with those big brown eyes and tells me I'm the best dad in the world, and for a moment, the doubt disappears." Isabella felt something stir inside her. She had spent months believing she was worthless, defined by failure. Yet here was this man, flawed, struggling, imperfect, who carried his pain with dignity and still found purpose in love. "You really mean it, don't you?" she said softly. Marcus turned to her, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Mean what?" "That even in the middle of your own struggles, you still choose to live because of her." Marcus nodded firmly. "Every single day. I might not have much. I might not be rich or powerful or famous, but I have Alana. And as long as she needs me, I'll keep fighting. That's the promise I made the day she was born." Isabella looked away, her vision blurring again. "I wish I had someone like that. Someone who needed me." Marcus's voice softened, gentle but steady. "You don't need someone else to need you to have worth. Isabella, you matter even without that. But..." He paused, his eyes meeting hers. "If you really feel like no one needs you, then think about this moment. Tonight, I needed you, because saving you reminded me that my life still has meaning beyond myself. You're not as invisible as you think." The words hit Isabella like a wave. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. No one had ever said something like that to her before. Not her parents, not her colleagues, not even her friends. For the first time in months, she felt something other than despair. She felt seen. The air between them shifted. No longer strangers. They were two souls bound by brokenness, yet finding strength in each other's honesty. Isabella's voice wavered. "How do you do it, Marcus? How you keep going when everything feels impossible?" Marcus exhaled, gazing at the stars barely peeking through the city haze. "One day at a time. That's it. I don't think about next year or even next month. I just focus on getting through today. Because if I can survive today, then tomorrow, maybe tomorrow will be better." Isabella absorbed every word, her chest tightening. Maybe she didn't have to figure out the rest of her life tonight. Maybe she just needed to survive this one night. Marcus turned to her again, a faint smile tugging at his lips. You know, Alana's always asking me why I believe in people. She says the world is full of liars, cheaters, people who hurt each other. And I tell her, yeah, that's true. But there are also people worth saving. People worth believing in. Tonight, you reminded me of that. Isabella's tears flowed freely now, but they weren't only tears of pain. They were tears of release, of something breaking open inside her. She whispered, her voice trembling, "I don't know how to thank you." Marcus shook his head. "You don't have to. Just promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you'll hold on. Maybe not forever, maybe not even for a year. Just for today. And then tomorrow, try again, one day at a time." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. I promise." And for the first time that night, a small flicker of hope sparked in Isabella's chest. Fragile, but real. The silence stretched between them, heavy and unyielding. The bridge loomed behind them, a dark shadow of what almost happened, and the river below kept roaring as if it wanted to remind them of the danger they had just escaped. Marcus sat cross-legged, still panting from the rescue, his body aching but his eyes fixed firmly on the young woman beside him. She sat curled up, hugging her knees tightly to her chest. Her clothes were damp from the mist in the air, her hair tangled and sticking to her tear-streaked face. For a long time, she said nothing, just rocked back and forth, her sobs echoing softly into the night. Marcus didn't rush her. He knew what it felt like to drown on the inside, while the world expected you to be fine. He had lived that quiet pain many times himself. So instead, he just sat there, breathing, letting her know she wasn't alone anymore. Finally, after what felt like forever, she whispered. Her voice was cracked, fragile, almost lost in the wind. "I shouldn't be here," she said. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "On the bridge." She shook her head slowly, her eyes glassy and distant. "In this world." The words cut Marcus to his core. His chest tightened. He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees, speaking as gently as he could. "I know it feels like that right now," he said, "like the pain is bigger than you. But believe me, you belong here. You matter." Her lips trembled, and for the first time, she turned her face fully toward him. In the dim light, Marcus saw her eyes, deep brown, filled with so much torment and exhaustion that it was almost unbearable to look at. "You don't even know me," she said bitterly. "How can you say I matter?" Marcus held her gaze, unwavering. "Because I've been where you are. Maybe not standing on a bridge, but I've felt like giving up. I've felt invisible. And I know how heavy that weight is. But I also know it doesn't stay that way forever. The storm doesn't last forever." She bit her lip hard, tears threatening again. "You don't understand. My life, it's ruined. I've lost everything. My family, my career, everything that made me who I was is gone." Marcus stayed quiet, giving her space to continue. She inhaled sharply, her breath shuddering. "My name is Isabella. Isabella Reyes. I used to be someone. I was a journalist. No, not just a journalist. One of the youngest reporters at the city's biggest news network. People respected me. I had friends, followers, invitations to events. I was somebody." Marcus nodded slowly, his brows drawn together in empathy. But then, her voice cracked, and she swallowed hard before continuing. "One story. One mistake. That's all it took. I trusted the wrong source. I aired a piece that turned out to be false. They fired me. Not just fired me. They humiliated me. Headlines everywhere called me a fraud. My reputation was destroyed. My so-called friends vanished. And my family. My father told me I was a disgrace to the Reyes name. He hasn't spoken to me since." Her words tumbled out faster now, like a dam breaking. I tried to fix it. I begged for a second chance, but nobody would listen. Every door slammed in my face. Every application rejected. I couldn't even get a job at a local paper. Months passed, and I fell behind on rent. I couldn't afford groceries. I sold everything I had just to survive. And last week, I was evicted. I have nowhere left to go. Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands, sobbing violently. Marcus's throat tightened. He saw the rawness in her, the hopelessness he recognized all too well. He remembered his own nights of wondering how he would pay rent, how he would feed Alana. He remembered the shame of feeling like a failure. "Isabella," he said softly, reaching out and placing a steady hand on her arm. "Losing everything doesn't mean you're nothing. You made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. That doesn't erase your worth. It doesn't erase who you are." She shook her head furiously. "You don't get it. My whole identity was tied to that job, that career. Without it, who am I? Nothing. Just a failure." Marcus tightened his grip gently, grounding her. "You're not nothing. You're a human being who's hurting. But pain doesn't define you. Mistakes don't define you. They're chapters, not your whole story." She looked at him, her tear-stained face reflecting pure disbelief. "Easy for you to say. You probably have a perfect life." Marcus let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Perfect? No, far from it. I'm a single dad. My wife left me when our daughter was a baby. Some days I can't even pay the bills. I've worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I've thought about giving up more times than I can count. But every time I look at my daughter's face, I remember I have a reason to keep going." Isabella's breath hitched. Her eyes softened, curiosity flickering through the despair. You've really been that low?" Marcus nodded. "Lower than I ever thought I could survive. But I did, and so can you. What you're going through now, it feels permanent, but it's not. It's just a season. One day, you'll look back on this and realize it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new." Her lip quivered again, but this time, her tears were quieter. She sniffled, wiping her face with the sleeve of her jacket. "What if I don't have the strength?" Marcus leaned in, his voice firm yet kind. "Then borrow mine. For now, lean on me until you can stand again. You don't have to fight this battle alone." The words hung in the air, powerful and simple. Isabella stared at him, as though trying to absorb them, trying to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. For the first time that night, her body relaxed slightly. Her shoulders, tense for hours, sagged as though she was releasing some of the burden she had been carrying. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Thank you for not letting go." Marcus squeezed her arm gently, his own eyes glistening. "You're welcome. But remember, it wasn't just me. You held on too." The city lights flickered across the river as they sat together in silence again. This time, though, the silence wasn't heavy with despair. It was lighter, fragile, filled with the faintest trace of hope. Marcus's arm trembled as it stretched toward her. His hand was open, palm upward, an invitation for her to choose life. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The young woman stared at him, her body swaying as though she was caught between 2 worlds. The one in front of her, filled with pain, and the one behind her, filled with possibilities she couldn't yet see. The night was merciless. A sharp gust of wind howled across the bridge, rattling the steel beams and whipping her hair wildly around her face. She cried out, her foot slipping just an inch on the slick railing. Marcus's heart lurched into his throat. "Careful," he shouted, his voice breaking. He took a step forward without thinking, fear overriding caution. She gasped, gripping the railing tighter with trembling fingers. "Don't come closer," she screamed, her voice raw. Marcus froze again, his hands raised. His chest heaved with panic. Every instinct screamed at him to grab her, to pull her back with all his strength. But he knew the wrong move could send her over the edge. "Okay," he said softly, forcing calm into his voice though his pulse hammered his ears. "I won't. Just hold on. Please. Just hold on a little longer." The woman's shoulders shook violently. Tears poured down her cheeks. Her lips moved, whispering words Marcus couldn't hear. He took another careful step forward, ignoring the sting of the cold wind against his face. "Listen to me," Marcus said, his voice low and steady now, like a lifeline stretched across the void. "You've already been strong tonight, stronger than you realize, because you're still here. You haven't let go yet. That means there's still a chance. Don't give up on yourself now, not when you've already fought this far." Her body wavered again, a fragile silhouette against the dark water below. And then it happened. Her foot slipped. It was just a fraction of a second. But to Marcus, time slowed to a crawl. He saw her arms flail, her body tilt forward, the railing sliding from beneath her grip. His stomach dropped, a scream rising in his throat, and he lunged. No! His boots slammed against the pavement as he threw himself forward, his arms outstretched. His fingers caught her wrist just as her body pitched over the edge. For a split second, she dangled above the rushing river, the sound of the water roaring like thunder below them. Marcus gritted his teeth, every muscle in his body straining as he tightened his grip. The woman screamed, her other hand clawing desperately at the air, searching for something solid. Marcus's shoulder burned with the weight, his knees scraping painfully against the concrete as he dug in his heels. "I've got you," he shouted, though his voice cracked with fear. "I'm not letting go." Her sobs turned to panic cries. I can't hold on." "Yes, you can." Marcus roared, his voice filled with a strength he didn't know he had. "Look at me. Focus on me. I won't let you fall." Her wide, terrified eyes locked onto his. For a moment, the world disappeared, the traffic, the city lights, even the river below. It was just the two of them, clinging desperately to each other in the battle between life and death. Marcus's arms trembled, the muscles screaming in protest. His palms were slick with sweat, and fear clawed at him that he might lose his grip. But he refused to let go. He thought of Alana, of her smile, her laughter, the way she hugged him every morning before school. He thought of how much she needed him. And he knew this woman had someone who needed her too, whether she realized it or not. With a guttural cry, Marcus pulled, his entire body straining as he dragged her upward. Her knees slammed against the railing, her skin scraping against the cold steel. She cried out in pain, but Marcus didn't stop. He hooked his other arm under hers, hauling her with every ounce of strength he had left. "Almost there," he panted, his muscles burning. "Don't stop. Don't give up on me now." Finally, with one last surge of effort, he pulled her over the railing and onto the pavement. They both collapsed in a tangled heap, gasping for breath. The woman sobbed uncontrollably, her body shaking as she clung to the rough ground like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Marcus rolled onto his back, his chest heaving, sweat and tears mixing on his face despite the freezing night air. His arms felt like they were on fire, his legs numb from kneeling on the hard concrete. But he didn't care. She was safe. She was alive. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rush of the river below and their ragged breathing. Then, slowly, Marcus sat up, his chest still rising and falling like a drumbeat. He turned toward her, his eyes soft, filled with both exhaustion and relief. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "You're okay now." The woman shook her head violently, tears still streaming down her face. No, I'm not okay. I'm broken. I don't know how to keep going." Marcus reached out and gently placed a hand on her trembling shoulder. "You don't have to have all the answers tonight. You don't have to fix everything right now. You just have to take one breath, then another. You've already done the hardest part. You chose to stay." Her sobs slowed just a little, her breathing uneven but less frantic. For the first time, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Not hope, not yet, but the faint spark of possibility. Marcus gave a tired but gentle smile. "See? You didn't fall. You're stronger than you think." The woman buried her face in her hands, crying harder, but this time the tears were different. They weren't just despair, they were release. Relief. Marcus sat beside her in silence, the night air wrapping around them both like a heavy blanket. His body ached, his soul exhausted, but he knew one thing for certain. If he walked past that bridge, if he hadn't stopped, this night would have ended in tragedy. Instead, it had ended with life. Marcus stood a few feet away, his breath shallow, his heart pounding so hard he could hear in his ears. The woman's sobs echoed against the steel beams of the bridge, each sound slicing to the night air like broken glass. She was still on the edge, still swaying, and Marcus knew this was the moment. Whatever he said next had to matter. "Please," he said, his voice trembling, but steady enough to carry across the cold night. "Don't do this. Don't take that step." The woman turned her head slightly, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the glow of the street lamp above them. Her eyes were red and swollen, her lips quivering as she tried to form words. Finally, she whispered, "You don't understand. I have nothing left, no reason to live." Marcus's chest tightened. He wanted to rush forward, to grab her and pull her back to safety, but he knew that one wrong move could push her over the edge. He had to rely on words that carried more weight than anything he had ever said in his life. "You think I don't understand?" he asked softly, his voice low and calm, as if speaking to a frightened child. "I do, more than you realize." The woman scoffed bitterly, hugging herself tighter against the wind. "You don't even know me. You don't know what I've been through." Marcus nodded slowly. "You're right. I don't know your whole story. I don't know the names of the people who hurt you or the moments that broke you. But I know what pain feels like. I know what it's like to want to give up. I've stood on the edge, too. Maybe not like this, but in my own way. And the only reason I'm still standing here today is because of one thing, my daughter." At the mention of his daughter, Marcus felt his throat tighten. He had never said these things out loud before. Not like this. But he pushed forward, knowing every word could be the difference between life and death. "I lost my wife to cancer," he said, his voice shaking. "I watched the woman I loved wither away right in front of me. And when she was gone, I thought my world had ended. I was left with nothing. No money, no hope, just a little girl who cried herself to sleep every night because she wanted her mom back. There were nights I thought about disappearing. Nights I thought the world would be better off without me. But then I'd look at my daughter's face and I realized if I gave up, she'd have nothing. No one. And I couldn't do that to her." The woman's shoulders trembled. She shifted her weight just slightly, but enough for Marcus to see she was listening. He took a careful breath and continued, his words flowing out of him like water breaking through a dam. "You say you have nothing left, but that's not true. You have you. You're still here. That means your story isn't finished yet. Maybe you don't see the reason right now. Maybe it feels like nobody cares. But I promise you, there is someone out there who would fall apart if you disappeared tonight. A parent, a sibling, a friend. Even if you don't believe it, your life is stitched into other lives in ways you can't see." Her tears streamed faster now, dripping onto her trembling hands as they clung to the railing. Marcus took one slow step closer, his palms raised. "I know you feel invisible. I know you feel like nobody sees you. But I see you. Right here, right now. You matter. To me. To the world. To the future you haven't even lived yet." The woman let out a sob, shaking her head violently. "But I'm tired. I'm so tired pretending I'm okay. Tired of smiling when inside I'm falling apart." Marcus's voice cracked as he answered, "I'm tired too. Every single day. I work 2 jobs. I barely sleep. I carry more weight than I can handle. But do you know what I've learned? You don't have to carry it all alone. You don't have to be strong all the time. It's okay to cry. It's okay to break. But it's not okay to give up on yourself. Because once you're gone, you can't take it back. And all the chances, the laughter you haven't had yet, the people you haven't met, the love you haven't felt, it all disappears." Her breathing quickened. She looked down at the water, then back at Marcus, her eyes wide with fear. But what if it never gets better? What if the pain never stops? Marcus swallowed hard. This was the heart of it, the fear that hope was a lie. He stepped just a little closer, his voice firm but gentle. "Then you fight one more day. And if tomorrow still hurts, you fight the day after that. You keep fighting until you find a reason. Because I promise you, pain doesn't last forever. It feels endless, but it isn't. There is light, even if you can't see it right now. And the fact that you're standing here, breathing, listening to me, means there's still a chance for you to find it." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. The woman's fingers loosened slightly on the railing, though she didn't step back. Marcus's pulse quickened. This was a turning point. He took a deep breath, and his voice softened to almost a whisper. "You are worth saving. Even if you don't believe it right now, I believe it. I don't know your name, but I know your life has meaning. And if you'll just take one step back, just one we can figure out together, You don't have to face this night alone. Her chin quivered. Her knees bent as though her strength was failing her. And finally, she whispered through her sobs, "Why do you care? Why would you even stop for me?" Marcus blinked hard against his own tears. "Because once, I wish someone would stop for me. And if I can be that person for you tonight, then maybe my pain wasn't for nothing." The woman's grip loosened. For the first time since Marcus had seen her, she leaned slightly away from the edge. Her sobs filled the night air raw and heartbreaking, but Marcus felt hope spark inside him. He stretched out his hand, not rushing, not forcing, just offering. "Take my hand. Not because I can fix everything, but because you don't have to fall tonight. Not while I'm here." For a moment, the world stood still. The river roared below. The wind whipped against their faces, and Marcus waited, his hand trembling in the air. And then, with a shaky breath, the woman reached back. It was nearly midnight when Marcus left the tall office building where he worked as a janitor. His body felt like it was made of stone, heavy from scrubbing floors and hauling garbage bags all night. The soles of his shoes were damp from the mop water, and his hands smelled faintly of bleach no matter how many times he rinsed them. Most nights, he would take the bus home. But that night, his wallet was thin, thinner than usual. Rent was coming up, and Alana had mentioned she needed new notebooks for school. Marcus decided he could save the few dollars by walking home, even if it meant an extra 40 minutes on foot through the cold. The city streets were quieter than usual. A few neon signs buzzed in the distance, glowing faintly against the misty night air. The hum of cars on the highway echoed like a dull heartbeat, but otherwise, the streets were empty. It was the kind of night that made a man feel invisible, like a shadow drifting through a city that had long since forgotten him. Marcus shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and walked with his head down, already thinking about the little time he had left to sleep before waking up for his delivery shift. His mind wandered to Alana, whether she had remembered to brush her teeth before bed, whether the old blanket was enough to keep her warm. That's when he heard it. At first, he thought it was just the wind whistling through the steel beams of the old bridge up ahead. But then as he drew closer, the sound sharpened. Soft sobs carried through night air. He slowed his steps, his brow furrowing. There was someone there. Marcus squinted, and his stomach lurched. A figure stood on the edge of the bridge, silhouetted against the city lights. She was barefoot, her shoes tossed carelessly behind her, her dress whipping violently in the wind. One step forward, and she would be gone. Marcus froze. His pulse thundered in his ears. For a moment, he thought he was imagining it. But no. The cries were real, the trembling shoulders real. The fragility of her body leaning dangerously forward was all too real. Everything inside him screamed to do something, but fear rooted him in place. Who was he to intervene? What if she didn't want help? What if he made it worse? But then a thought stabbed through him. What if this was the last chance she had? What if no one else came? Without realizing it, Marcus's feet were already moving. "Don't jump!" he shouted, his voice cracking. The woman flinched, twisting her head slightly to glance at him. Her face glistened with tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks. For a brief second their eyes locked, and Marcus felt the weight of her despair hit him like a wave. "You don't understand," she yelled back, her voice raw. Marcus's throat tightened. He did understand. Not her exact pain, maybe, but the hopelessness, the crushing weight of carrying too much. He knew that feeling all too well. "I don't need to understand," he called, taking a cautious step closer. "I just need you to know your life matters. More than you realize." The woman's lip quivered. She shook her head violently, her hair flying around her face. "It doesn't. Nobody cares. Nobody even sees me." Marcus swallowed hard. Those words sliced deep. He had felt invisible, too, scrubbing toilets while people walked past him like he was part of the furniture, working endless hours only to be treated like nothing more than a number on a paycheck. He knew that kind of loneliness, that kind of invisibility. But tonight wasn't about him. Tonight was about her. "Look, I don't know your story," he said gently, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "But I know what it's like to feel broken, to think there's no way out. I promise you this isn't the way." The woman's body trembled. The wind howled louder, rattling the bridge's old steel beams. Marcus glanced at the dark water below, rushing violently. The river wasn't peaceful. It was angry, like it wanted to swallow her whole. The thought made his stomach twist. He took another slow step forward. His boots scraped against the concrete, and she immediately jerked back, clinging tighter to the railing. "Stay back!" she cried. Marcus froze. His chest rose and fell rapidly, but he nodded. Okay, I'll stay right here. But please, just talk to me. Tell me what brought you here tonight." The woman laughed bitterly, though it sounded more like a sob. "Talking won't fix anything. You don't know what it's like to have everything ripped away, to feel like you're drowning even when you're on dry land." Marcus's heart ached. If only she knew how many nights he had sat in the dark, wondering how to feed his daughter, wondering how to make rent, wondering if he was enough. He took a shaky breath. "You're right. I don't know your exact pain. But I know pain. I know loss. And I know what it feels like to think you can't go on. But you can. You can, because someone out there is waiting for you. Someone will cry if you don't come home tonight. Someone will wake up tomorrow and wonder why they didn't get to say goodbye." Her shoulders slumped. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing harder. For the first time, Marcus saw her hesitation. She hadn't let go yet. She was still listening. In courage, he softened his tone. "I know you feel invisible right now, but I see you. I see you standing there, and I won't walk away. Not tonight." The silence that followed was unbearable. Marcus's legs shook, and his fingers dug into his palms. He had no idea what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let this woman disappear into the river without a fight. So he stood there in the freezing night, his breath turning white in the air, every nerve in his body screaming with fear and determination. And with his heart pounding louder than the traffic rushing by, Marcus whispered again, almost to himself, "Please, don't jump." Marcus Williams wasn't the kind of man people noticed when he walked into a room. He didn't wear expensive suits or shiny watches. He didn't drive a fancy car. His shoes were scuffed, his shirts faded from too many washes, and there were always dark circles under his eyes from working too many hours and sleeping too little. But if you asked his 10-year-old daughter, Alana, she would tell you he was a hero. Life had not been kind to Marcus. Years ago, he had dreams, big ones. He had wanted to be a teacher, someone who could inspire kids to believe in themselves. He had even started college, juggling classes and part-time work. But life has a way of turning dreams into ashes. When his wife, Jasmine, was diagnosed with cancer, everything changed. He dropped out of school. He sold their car. Every dollar, every ounce of energy went into hospital bills, medicine, and trying to keep her alive. But after 2 long years of fighting, Jasmine passed away, leaving Marcus with nothing but debts, grief, and a little girl who needed him more than ever. From that day on, Marcus made a promise. No matter how hard it got, no matter what he had to sacrifice, Alana would never feel like she was alone. She would grow up knowing she was loved, even if he had to break himself to make it happen. The way to survival. Every day was a battle for Marcus. He woke up before the sun, dragging himself out of bed while Alana still slept. He made her breakfast, sometimes just toast, sometimes eggs when he had enough money, and left with a hug before heading out to his first job as a delivery driver. He spent hours rushing through traffic, delivering packages, groceries, and takeout meals. The pay wasn't much, but it kept food on the table. By late afternoon, he came home just in time to check Alana's homework, cook dinner, and share a few laughs before putting her to bed. And then, when most people were winding down for the night, Marcus was heading out again, this time to his second job. He worked as a janitor in an office building downtown, cleaning up after people who would never know his name. He scrubbed floors, emptied trash cans, and polished desks while the city lights sparkled outside the windows. By the time he returned home, his body ached, his hands smelled of cleaning chemicals, and his eyelids felt like lead. But he never complained, not to Alana, not to anyone. He carried his struggles like a silent burden, because complaining didn't pay the bills. The apartment, that wasn't quite a home. Marcus and Alana lived in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment. The walls were thin, The heating barely worked in the winter, and the sound of traffic never seemed to stop. Their furniture was secondhand, their curtains too short to cover the windows, and the couch doubled as Marcus's bed because he had given the bedroom to Alana. But within those walls, Marcus tried to build a home. He taped Alana's drawings to the fridge, told her bedtime stories about brave princesses and kind-hearted heroes, and saved up for small surprises: a book she wanted, a stuffed toy, an ice cream cone on a hot day. To the outside world, they had nothing. But to Alana, her father gave her everything he could. The silent battles. What people didn't see were the nights Marcus spent sitting at the kitchen table after Alana was asleep, staring at bills he couldn't pay: electricity, rent, school supplies. It felt like a mountain he could never climb. Sometimes he had to choose between paying rent late or skipping a meal so his daughter could eat. There were nights he cried quietly into his hands, careful not to let Alana hear. Nights when the loneliness was unbearable, when the silence of the apartment seemed to echo Jasmine's absence. Nights when he wondered if he was failing, if he was enough. But every morning, when Alana smiled at him with sleepy eyes and wrapped her small arms around his neck, he found strength again. "I love you, Daddy," she would say. And those words fueled him more than food or rest ever could. The man behind the struggles. Marcus wasn't perfect. He lost his temper sometimes. He forgot things. He wasn't always patient. But he was determined. And that determination made him stand out, even if he didn't see it himself. Neighbors admired him, though they rarely said it to his face. Teachers noticed how much Alana was loved, even though she didn't have fancy clothes or gadgets like other kids. Strangers sometimes caught the way he looked at his daughter, as though she was the only reason he kept breathing, and it softened their hearts. But Marcus didn't think of himself as admirable. He thought of himself as surviving, one day at a time, one paycheck at a time, one meal at a time. Why he understood the bridge. That's why, when Marcus saw the young woman on the bridge, his heart clenched with recognition, because he knew what it felt like to be tired, so tired that hope seemed like a cruel joke. He knew what it was like to stand on the edge of despair, wondering if it would be easier to just stop. But he also knew the reason he hadn't given in. Alana, his daughter, was his anchor, his light, his reason to keep going when the darkness tried to swallow him whole. And as he looked at the stranger on the bridge, Marcus couldn't help but think, what if she didn't have an anchor? What if no one had ever told her she mattered? What if this was her last cry for help, and no one else was around to hear it? That thought was unbearable, because Marcus knew, deep down, that sometimes all it took was one voice, one stranger, one hand reaching out at the right moment to change everything. And so, as he stood there in the freezing wind, calling out, "Don't jump," to a woman whose name he didn't even know, Marcus wasn't just saving her. In a way, he was saving himself.